Hello, my Waterproofians. Welcome to another episode of Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens, which is me. I'm Jacob Givens, and I'm going to lead you through the Waterproof Records journey. If this is your first time here, welcome to this show. You might be clicking on this episode because you see who my guest is and you're a big fan, or if you've been with me the entire time, thank you so much. I am a music lover, fan, musician myself, and I started this show to highlight some of the most influential albums on my life as a teenager and all the way up until today, and that's also what I ask of my guests. So if you're new to Waterproof Records, that's what we do. We talk about albums, we dig in, we talk about the experience of loving music and what led people into a career in music, and that is why I have my guest on today, which is Evan Thomas Weiss, who is also known as Into It, Over It, which is a Chicago indie rock band that is just fantastic. I have been a fan of Into It, Over It's music for years, and Evan is the one who created this band as a solo project, but has since morphed into a full-on band that tours, plays live, and they put out a lot of music. So I highly recommend, if you are not familiar with Into It, Over It, you should definitely check it out. But if you're a big fan and you're excited about this interview, welcome. And if you've never heard of Evan's music before, this is your chance to learn all about what led him to creating Into It, Over It and where they're headed for the future. So it's time to talk about Into It, Over It with Evan Thomas Weiss. Let's go.
Things are going to change. I can feel it.
If there's going to be that kind of party, I'm gonna...
Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records. Waterproof Records with Jacob Givens.
I am so excited to get this interview started, but before we do that, I'm also excited to tell you about my sponsor, DistroKid. I tell you every time, if you haven't checked out DistroKid, what are you waiting for? First of all, I have an incredible link that gives you 30% off your first year, and that is distrokid.com/VIP, which you are /waterproof. So wait, I shouldn't talk in the middle of the link. Let me get the link out and then I'll rave review. distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. That's your link that gets you 30% off your first year, which is a pretty significant amount of savings, I must say. And that's because you're a VIP. You listen to Waterproof Records and, you got to get that discount. But DistroKid is your chance, your opportunity to finally release your music out into the world. They make it so easy. They have an iOS app now that you should definitely check out. And it's a way for you to share your music, make a profit that comes back to you 100%. And they have all these amazing tools that you can share, like your album art and even the videos that run on Spotify and streamers, and they link you up to YouTube. And I mean, there's just so many cool services. So I highly recommend you check out DistroKid. I have music on DistroKid, and I plan on releasing more music in the near future on DistroKid. So once again, distrokid.com/VIP/waterproof. Check it out. Get that 30% off. But now it's the moment you've been waiting for, my interview with Mr. Evan Thomas Weiss. So without further ado, welcome to Waterproof Records, Evan Thomas Weiss, aka Mr. Into It, Over It. Thank you for being here, sir. I'm so happy to have you on the show today.
It's good to be here. We've been DMing on Instagram about this for like what seems like a year.
It's been a long time.
I'm
Yeah,
glad it finally happened.
Yeah, we've talked about it for a while, and not for lack of trying, just busy schedules, life, travels, all sorts of things. You playing shows and all sorts of stuff.
Again, yeah. Life gets in the way of living. You know what I mean?
Yeah. The majority of people who listen to the show, I have some people who watch, but it's obviously podcasts are predominantly listened to. But behind you is quite an impressive collection of records I see there.
Yeah.
Wow.
It goes all the way to the floor. It's in multiple rooms of the house. So I run a record label called Storm Chasers, which is a passion project. And the way that we do it, it's subscription based and it's community driven. So it's like 25 people involved, but I'm like the main person running it. But before, but when I was in my late teens and early 20s, worked at I didn't go to college. I was going to go to school for a music business degree. And like in the months before the first semester, got a job working for a music distributor. And just to set, I was like, all right, I already got the job. I might as well just dive right into working.
Right.
And that career was around selling music to record stores on the East Coast. So I grew up in New Jersey. And so imagine you're a record store in like Baltimore, Maryland, and you're, sourcing vinyl for your store. I worked at a company that was what is called a one-stop. So instead of having to go to 30 record labels and get the catalog from each record label, you could just call us and we would have everything from all the record labels and you could just order from one place. So it would save you a lot on shipping and stuff like that. So I was one of the main sales guys and marketing people for this one stop. And I worked there from the time I was like 19 until I was 23.
Yeah.
And, and so when I started, I was just a dude packing CD mailers and LP mailers. And then by the time I left, I was one of like the lead salespeople. And so that was like my first office gig. And that would have been like 2003, 2004.
Right.
And that kind of, I bought records all through high school and, grew up in a house with a turntable. And so I would buy punk records and stuff, but it was working there that really like got me into collecting. And,
yes. And it's quite a collection you have, I see, in one room, which you said it's in multiple rooms, which is amazing. Yeah,
I appreciate that. My little heart grew 2 sizes just now.
Yes.
But yeah, it's like, I've also moved this from 4 or 5 apartments and across the country. And like, it's come with me a lot,
everywhere.
And it goes through, I'll sell some. And then like when I was touring a lot, like when I first started touring a lot, would sell a decent amount of it and then have to rebuy things as I was able to get money again. And now that I have a career and, I have been able to supplement this collection very nicely. And
yes.
I don't buy records much anymore. I order new stuff online when it strikes a chord, but I'm not buying like I used to. I used to go to the record store and walk out with like 20 things,
Totally.
Now it's like 1 or 2.
Yeah. And you were ahead of we're kind of in a vinyl renaissance return, it's kind of a resurgence. And so you were ahead of all that because now they're pricing them up. There's more available and represses and reprints. So probably a good thing. I'm the reverse of you, which is so my parents had a turntable set up, but it was like classical music, Willie Nelson, the Beatles. It was like that kind of stuff. And so it wasn't my turntable, but it was my parents. And so in the 90s, I had the tape and then the CDs. And so the only records I bought 3 records in the 90s. And it was because of my obsessive love of the Smashing Pumpkins. I remember we were like vacationing somewhere in Minneapolis and I saw Siamese Dream on record and I picked it up. Little did I know that would become like a gem, like a holy grail.
It's like a $300 record. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I bought it in 1994, I think. And it's this marbly red. And it's just, I kept it with me. And then the only other records I ever bought in the 90s were I Got a Door. Also, I was such a dorky fan who just had to have it all. The one thing I skipped was I didn't buy Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness, which that would have been like, wow, didn't do it.
Well, hang on a second.
You're going to grab it, aren't you? You probably have it in your collection. Evan has now slid his chair over to the wall of records and he's pulling out both. Are those OGs? Those OGs?
Both of them.
Oh my God.
But yeah, this one is fucking awesome. I only pull it out because I have to follow it up. I just have to tell you fucked up.
I fucked up big time. You're right. I fucked up because I don't know why I didn't think to do it. I had it on CD. I had the booklets. I had everything. But it's so funny because vinyl in the 90s when I was a teenager was fading out, right? It was like the thing that and there's Gish. He's got them all, guys. If you're watching right now, he's literally rifling through and showing me look, he's got a door right there. He's got all of them.
That's it. It stops at a door.
It stops there. The buck stops here. But that's impressive. And again, like I was saying, the vinyl was kind of on its way out in a big way back then. So it almost seemed silly to buy them for me at the time where I was in Oklahoma as a kid. It was like, why am I buying these records? I'm doing it because I'm a fan.
Yeah. You were talking about the vinyl resurgence and it's like, we actually went out of business like 4 months before the boom happened. Like,
really?
And the reason was because physical music stopped selling for a while.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was like a 7 or 8 month period of like no one really buying physical music. And then all of a sudden vinyl hit. And had we just stayed in business another 4 or 5 months, we would have come out really good on the other side. It just didn't work out. But honestly though, if that hadn't happened, I maybe wouldn't have started 50. I wouldn't have started Into It Over It. I wouldn't have moved here. I wouldn't be where I'm at now. And so I could be sour about it, but yeah,
it happened for a reason. And I'm glad that's actually the perfect time to transition. Like I'm familiar with your music and your work, and you're a very talented guy, really great dude. And now this is my opportunity. Yes. All the accolades,
Stop.
Come on, please. No more. I want to get this opportunity because you just set up really nicely that, where you grew up but let's talk about Into It Over It and how this all began. You are quite a prolific songwriter because this whole thing really starts, if I'm not mistaken, is the 52 Weeks project. Yeah. That's where we kicked this off back in 2009. Is that correct?
No. So it was actually in 2007. So it was my 23rd birthday. Okay. And what happened was the distributor that I was working at went out of business.
Right.
My partner and I at the time had broken up. So, and the band that I was in before, which is called The Progress, was kind of winding down. Like Jason was going to law school, and like the guys didn't really want to do it anymore. We're like 21, 22, but we'd been a band all through, like since the 90s, we've been playing music together. And so you're like, oh wow, we've been a band for almost 10 years and nothing's happened yet. Like this is probably done. So I couldn't convince those guys to be motivated about it. So all this shit's going wrong, and I'm losing all of this, everything's kind of falling apart. And I had all these, I had all this drive to be working on something, but didn't have any motivation from anyone around me to really work on it. Right. So I had the idea to challenge myself to be creative and to, and the idea was 52 Weeks. It started as an idea, and the project itself was just going to be called Into It Over It, because the concept was you would have 6 days to write, record, and release a song.
Right.
So the first song was the only one that I had like ample time to prepare, quote unquote. But really the song I wrote in the days before the first session. And so, I call my buddy Steve, who owns the recording studio Gradwell, where almost all of it was made. And, told him, I was like, I want to book every Wednesday night for a full year. And he's like, you're an absolute fucking psychopath. I explained to him the idea, and he was really into it. And he kind of thought he was under the impression like, well, if you get started, like you can't stop. Like it'll look bad if you can't finish it. And I'm like, trust me, I know I'm that weighs on me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what a commitment.
So we started the first week, and Batstow was literally written, 2 or 3 days before it was recorded. It was written that same week. And then sure enough, we were able to keep it going all 52 weeks. And it didn't really get, in the middle is like the sweet spot. It's like from week 8 until like week 40 is like, we're in just a groove. Like
that's where you hit it. That's the stride.
And it was, and so sure enough, almost every Wednesday night, sometimes we'd have to move things based on schedules. So some weeks I even had less than 7 days, and some weeks, it was always, Wednesday was always the bitter end, but the songs would go online for free every Thursday morning. And so we'd be up all night.
Where were you uploading them at the time?
Intoitover.com.
It was your website, and that's where you were loading the songs. They're free. They were streaming.
We would make new artwork every week. Like,
wow, dude.
I would send my buddy Brian, who helped me with all the art. He did all the art for the physical version too. I would send him like the lyrics and kind of loosely what the song was about. And he would make a little splash page for the website. So if you went to intoitover.com, the art would update every week, and you click in, it would have the lyrics, and you could download the tune. You could also download all the songs that were before that. And it was just a free project. And then
that's amazing.
As we were doing the last couple of weeks, I joined another band called Demira, who was like a more active touring band. And so the last 2 songs were recorded in the van while we were on tour. So that's why they sound so shitty, is because they were recorded on the road. But when I was so also just ready to be done with it. By the time it got to me, I was like, fucking
it's a whole year of your life, and the pressure, right? The pressure.
Yeah. So it finished, and then it was just available for free on the internet. And that was what it remained. It was just like, cool, that's what it was. That's a moment in time. It was a fun project that I did. And now I'm on to another thing, and I'm touring with this other band, and this is where my trajectory is at. And so I played in this other band for like a year, and I didn't even think about it. And then this label, No Sleep, who I'd met while doing 52 Weeks. And had told them about it while I was in the middle of the project, they continued to follow along. And maybe like 4 or 5 months after it was all done, they hit me up and they were like, hey, like, what do you think about putting this out on CD and making it a little more official? And so it's like, yeah, sure. And so we took all the songs offline. Mm-hmm. We remixed and remastered all of them.
Wow.
Because the originals, we only had like an hour to mix them. So they were very like rough and raw, and we give them a little like volume leveling, but they weren't actually mastered. They were just, so there is like a free version of it has some different, it sounds different. It's like a straight up just different version of it. We didn't add any new instruments, but they were like, we actually like gave the songs some attention and some treatments.
Right.
And so we took it down, remixed it, remastered it, and then it got released in June 2009, like almost a year and a half after it was actually finished. And so I got this box of CDs in my house, my apartment at the time in Chicago.
Yeah.
And was like, well, I guess I should start maybe playing some shows just to help sell these CDs. And so I did a couple shows, and then Demira, I was asked to leave Demira, and and then shortly after I left, the band kind of fizzled out anyway. But I was asked to leave Demira and was like, well, I maybe I'll start doing Into It Over It again. And the only reason it was called Into It Over It at all is because that's what that first 52-week songwriting project was.
And so I am so glad you answered this, because when I first heard the name Into It Over It, before I met you and I knew that it was you know what I mean? I knew Into It Over It as the band name and didn't know it was this singular guy behind it.
Yeah.
And when I heard the band name, it made me laugh out loud, because what it made me think of, it made me remember being a teenager and like being with a group of friends, and then somebody in the group is like super into a band. And then the next time you hang out with them, they're like, I'm over it. And so it harkened back to that fading passion of people that you'd be with. And you'd almost like explore a band's discography and then show up and be like so ready to talk about Green Day with your buddy. And then they'd be like, yeah, I'm kind of over it now. And you'd be like, no, what? Oh yeah.
I just got started. Yeah.
I just got started.
I mean, that's kind of what it was about. It was actually from hanging in the studio.
Yeah.
When like the Progress was making a record, we would be talking about where we wanted to eat that day.
Yeah.
And you would say the name, like, let's go to Wendy's, and someone would be like, Into It, and be like, all right, cool. And then, you go to Wendy's like 6 times and you're like, Wendy's? And you're like, nah, over it. And
over
like,
it.
Okay, gotta think of something new. But with the 52-week songwriting project, it was like, you have 6 days to work on a tune, and then you immediately have to shift gears and start working on a new tune. So it's like, you're into something for 7 days, and then you're over it. You gotta move on to the next thing. It's like a constant cycle. And so that was why it was called what it was called.
Yeah.
And that was just supposed to be the name for 52 weeks. And that was it. Like,
that's it.
But when I started having to sell CDs and started playing shows, it's like, well, what else am I going to call this thing? Like, that's what it's called.
That's Into It Over It.
And so further, it's carried with me. Like, I don't I don't bathe in nostalgia very often.
I do bake in nostalgia. No,
yeah. And it's not like, well, you do. I mean, your podcast is very nostalgia focused.
Yeah.
I mean, but like also it's, I don't tend to look back at things I already did and be like, how can I make that again? Right. I'm always looking forward. Like, how can I make the next thing? How can I push myself further? How can I expand on these new ideas, on previous ideas? Like, maybe not do the same thing again, but take what I've done and elaborate on it. So I'm always trying to, if I weren't making something that I felt sounded new every time I was making something, I wouldn't be inspired to make stuff anymore. And so,
that makes sense.
So it's kind of maintained in that way moving forward. And I think Into It Over It has a vibe and a sound, but at the same time, I really strive to not make the same record twice. And I think every record kind of has its own identity a little bit, and is pushing forward in a way that, is pretty cool. And I think that's, indicative of the name itself too. Cause how many bands just like, they have that style and it just sounds like they're making the same thing over and over. And it's like, and that's cool. That's cool.
Sure. Sure. Some people like that and some people prefer that, right? That's what they want. That's
not what I want to do. I've always been really inspired by like Beck or like Radiohead, in the way where it's like, you buy the new album and you have no idea what the fuck it's going to be until you put it on. And then you're like, oh, this is the energy of the record. Like, this is what I'm stepping into. Yeah. And everyone has their favorites because of that. Like, everyone can be like, oh man, like for me with Beck, like I love my favorite is Mutations, which is the one.
It's one of my
after
all-time
Odelay.
favorite Beck albums. Absolutely,
Yeah.
hands down.
And that's the one, like, but then I can listen, like, Odelay still sounds like it's made in the year 3000. Like, I don't know how they made that record. And
Right.
and Midnight Vultures has its own fucking vibe.
Totally.
And, you know, and so does Sea Change and Morning Phase. Like, you know, it's like, so that's what I've always loved, and try to keep that same energy. But that's totally where the name's from.
Yeah, I love it. And so you've done this huge, ambitious project. It's now you can sell it on CDs. It's released. You're starting to play shows. And so do you then think to yourself, all right, I want to do something that has a theme behind it again, and that's what inspired 12 Towns? Or like,
Yes.
that's the same thing? You're like, I want to do something that I have an end goal, and that's what I'm going to try to accomplish. So,
Yes.
so tell me a little bit about that.
So 12 Towns spawned. I did all this touring with Demira.
Right.
And we had done something in the course of a year. We had done something like 3 8 to 12 week tours, like really long tours, and they were hard tours. Like, no one made any money. They were
Sure.
but there were all these great stories. I had all these really fun stories about specific towns and stuff we had done. And so I was like, cool, I got this idea for songs. I wrote all the towns down on like a sheet of paper. There were like 17 towns that had a good story. And
Right.
and I was like, all right, let's do 12, because that's a nice even number. I thought 12 Towns sounded like something kind of catchy. But the idea was, let's do, in my mind, I was like, I wanted to do something that was more of a long tail project that also
Right.
wasn't centered around me. And that was something that I'd never seen someone else do, which was the same with 52 weeks. I've still never seen anyone do 52 weeks since I've done it. So, but the idea with 12 Towns was to do 6 split 7-inch records,
Right.
with 6 different bands that were buddies of mine from way back when, and maybe like their new band, on 6 different labels with 6 different graphic designers.
Wow.
And so the idea there is, you get the only constant in all of that is Into It Over It.
Right.
And so you get 6 bands talking about Into It Over It. You get 6 labels talking about Into It Over It. You get 6 designers talking about Into It Over It. And then you have 6 records that come out over a long period of time, like a year and a half, 2 years. So you always have something new.
Wow.
So you can keep
Dude.
staying in the conversation, keep having something new to sell on tour, keep having something new coming out. And so that basically set me up for 2 years of promotion.
Right.
That was, and I had to organize all of it. So it was a shitload of work, but at the same time, there was a lot of passive promotion that I was able to get from it, from like my buddies in Everyone Everywhere, and my buddies in Castavet, and my buddies in Empire, and my, you know, and the folks at Top Shelf, and the folks at Count Your Lucky Stars, and the folks at No Sleep, and the folks at Mightier Than Sword. And so it was this huge collaborative effort. All the 7 inches were pretty limited, so they all sold out. And then the plan always was like, when these 7 inches are all gone, we'll put all the songs on a single record, and then we can sell the single record. And and so that was the whole idea behind 12 Towns. It was just like a huge collaboration of like bringing a community of people together. And there's a lot of people who try to collect all 6. So there's like people finding, you know, bands maybe they'd never heard of before through this. They may have liked me, but never heard of any other bands. And they may like, you know, Swing Set, who is one of the bands, they may have like seen them play the Klinghouse in Akron a bunch of times. So they picked up that 7-inch, and then they found out who I was, and then they'd look into me a little deeper, and then they'd find these other bands. So it was really in one hand, it was kind of selfish. On the other hand, though, it really brought, I think, a community of bands and people together that were able to network with each other and work together really well. And I mean, all of us every band in that collection knew each other and were buds and played shows together.
Friends.
And so,
yeah. So clever. I think it's incredibly clever. That's what I think is so impressive about it, is you really had to find unique ways of standing out, and the music business and how you share music. Since you've come up and you know, build this career for yourself, it's changed, it's transformed, because long gone are the days of a website where the streams are, and everybody now is relying upon a streaming service, right, to get the music, and physical media, as in terms of CDs. I mean, obviously people are buying records again, but it's totally different. And you've lived through all of that. You've had 4 studio albums come through, you know, from 2011 until where we are today, and really seen the shift. And so I'm sure you've felt that. And do you think it's gotten easier for you to share your music now with people?
Well, the way we do it now is a lot different. Like, I don't, and I mean, this is a loaded question, because like
Sorry.
No, don't be. I've been through the machine of what the music industry is. And so now, I'm on the other side with a lot more perspective and understanding of what is, in my mind, my belief, a smart investment versus just a, I shouldn't say smart, because that implies that something is dumb. I don't think it's dumb. I don't think working with a label is a bad idea, but for where I am in my career, I can set up what we're doing to have very tangible return. Mm-hmm. Like we have a very focused, dedicated, wonderful fan base that are very loyal and very supportive of everything that we do. Not just me with Into It Over It, but the other bands that we're in and the other bands that people I play in bands with are in. It's like it's like a family. And that's what Storm Chasers is. So we're set up with the ability where everyone can own their own music. We can work in a very equitable fashion where we can release music, not in a way that is beyond our own means, but also see a tangible financial return instantly. And that is like the biggest challenge with working with a label is like, you want a label that you're working with to be able to give you things that you can't provide for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I've worked really hard in the last 7-8 years to set up what we're doing to be very self-reliant. Like we built our own recording studio. We work in the same building as the record pressing plant that we use. So like our recording studio is in the same building as the vinyl pressing plant. They're connected by like a staircase, so it's like, we're in a very unique position. And also everyone I play music with, at least with Into It Over It, we all work in the music gear industry. So like I work at Reverb, Joe works at Reverb, Matt works at Sounds, and Adam works at Shure. And so we're like, we have access to resources that not a lot of people do, but we've set ourselves up consciously to have that. Yeah. So because those resources that we've found and worked our way to having benefit not just our professional careers, but our creative ones as well. So, like there's certain misnomers that I think are really great for certain, like I think PR is really good for certain bands, but it's not a worthwhile investment for us right now at this stage in our career, And so we're not spending money on that kind of thing. And that's just where we're at. But everything we had done previously informs where we're at now and informs what we do now and informs how we get paid now. And, I want to work in a fashion that is tangible.
Makes sense.
And it's because I've been on the other side of it. Like I've done records before with massive budgets and they were awesome, priceless experiences that I will never have again. But I'll never see $1 from any of them. And that's okay. I've made peace with that. But like, I want to see $1. If we're going to put all this time and money and effort into something, we should get paid for it. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we've just, it's funny, like you think about, and I've talked about this with a couple other people before, but like you work so hard as a young band to to get these goals that you think are going to be really like the stuff that it's going to change your life. And it's going to be, this is what I see. This is what I fantasize about, what I dream about, blah, 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 blah. You get all those things and you're like, man, this actually isn't like, it's not that great. Like it's not what I thought it would be. Yeah. And so you work your way through this entire machine just to get to the end of it and be like, well, I actually was having way more fun when we were just doing it ourselves and we were like putting in the time. And so you go back, I went back all the way to the beginning of like how we did it when we started. And I'm having way more fun with music now than I was in that. Then in that middle period, it's like, because that's actually what was fucking kick ass about it. It was,
because you're doing it because you love it. It's the interesting thing is I talked about this. I was a guest on another show, and the guy asked me. He said, "How do you still retain your enthusiasm for music? How do you come across so enthusiastic about music, being a musician, and still having? You've seen it in my videos, the way I get excited about it, and I think you're still enthusiastic about music as well." And the weirdest part about my life and my career trajectory is in 2007, I also made my own first solo album, but I was doing that as like a fun thing to just, I want to do this. I love music so much. But my past 20 years of life in LA has been so laser focused on, I'm going to make it into the movie business and I'm going to become an actor and a comedian and a screenwriter. And so it's so funny because my attention was always on that. I was always trying so hard to really get after it, write and sell the script or get this thing made or, all of that. And in the same capacity, when I let go of all those pursuits and me and my friends just started enjoying and making stuff together, it completely changed the dynamic of why I got into this in the first place. It took away all that need to be like, once this happens, my life is going to be different and better and all that stuff.
Yeah, it's like, how do you define better?
Exactly. And then to top it all off, once I got to this whole thing that's happening to me now, which I never expected, that came from solely a place of, I love it. 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 And that's all there is to it. And so what you're seeing from me is never a chore. It's never a challenge. It's like, you want me to talk about how much I love a fucking song? Are you kidding me? And you like watching me do it? Yeah. Okay. So I never in a million years in my 40s imagined that I would be doing what I'm doing now and reaching people the way that I'm reaching them. And it's because music had never been the centerpiece of my life. It had always been the thing that the foundation that kept me going and kept me waking up every morning. But anyway, it's just so interesting to see you and you're a little bit younger than I am, but we're very close in the same generations and the time and the music that we were raised with. And I'm dying to get into those albums that really sparked you. And before we get to that, I just think it's fascinating to hear about how here you were in 2007. And the thing I'm so impressed by is there's just a tremendous amount of motivation and drive to choose such ambitious projects at that age and go, I'm going to see it through.
Oh yeah.
And
I mean, I will say that's you can be able to talk to my therapist about this, but if I say I'm going to do something, I figure out a way to do it. And
No shit.
And it's like that with my job. It's like that with the label. Yeah. There's a lot of things that we do or that I've been a part of that have been really, really unique. And it's just because I refuse to believe that, it's not that I don't take no for an answer, but it's like, there's a way to figure anything out. Like it's, where there's the will, it's like, I guess a trite statement, where there's a will, there's a way, but it's like fucking real, man. And it's like,
that's how I've done it too.
The only people standing in anybody's way, in my mind, is people standing in their own way of what their goals are. It's like, and some people, and obviously that's a privileged thing to say, because it's like some people just aren't afforded the ability or the assets and I came from a home raised by musicians, like what we weren't fortunate, but we weren't not fortunate either. It's like, sure. I was given my parents and the parents of people who I played music with growing up, like, were really excited about what we were doing. And, and looking back on it now as a grown man, it's like, oh yeah, it's because they knew where we were.
Right.
They knew we were in the basement making music and not, fucking drinking underage or like getting into trouble.
Getting into trouble, breaking the law, doing something that's going to get you in trouble or ruin your life, So
like they knew they could, we were in the basement making noise. Like they knew where are the kids? Oh, they're downstairs. They're
downstairs. I can hear them.
And so like, and that's, because we started when we were in the 5th grade, like that we were learning how to play guitar when we were little kids, it's like
amazing.
And so, we came from a fortunate scenario, but we're also encouraged. We like, whenever we had harebrained ideas or silly, like, what if we did this, or what if we tried that, or what if we went here? We were encouraged to at least try, even if we were going to fail, we were encouraged to try. And so, that was really, really big. And that stuck with me and the people that I grew up with, played music with through our whole lives. And we, me and Mike, who's the singer of The Progress, we were just talking about it the other day. We're like, man, we were doing a ton of stupid shit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we were given the permission to, and it's like, because of that like learning how to fail at a young age, to me, is like pretty important. Like if you're able to understand and grasp the idea that like you can make a mistake and it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means that, like it's a learning moment. If you're taught that young, it's, you're willing to take way more chances
Absolutely.
as a grown up, in my opinion. That's my belief.
Yeah.
And that's kind of led me to where we're at, and we don't win all the time. I mean, there's into
Totally.
whatever it's gone through all, we at this point we're a good old club band, like it's like,
Yeah.
but
you're doing
comfortable. I'm comfortable with where we're at. I mean, we get to make the art that we want to make on the terms that we want to make it. And there are people out there who are excited about it. And that's at this point in my life, in, being 38, about to turn 39, it's like, I'm totally comfortable with that and okay with it. And music has allowed me and my friends to do, see, and experience things that I never would have thought in my wildest dreams. Like,
I love it.
Yeah.
You hear that, listeners? You hear that? You just try, okay? You just try. I mean, I think that that's a very valuable message, and it speaks to people who are listening now and are my age or older or your age and younger, but you can easily talk yourself out of trying, because you can be like, oh, that window is passed, or I tried it once before and it didn't work. I just think that I wouldn't be here still living in the city that I'm living in if I gave up. Now, they always had good years, bad years, highs and lows.
Yeah.
It's so funny because people will comment when it was early going and people were watching my videos. Some of the trolls and the haters and things like that would say things like, I cannot believe that you have attention for just sitting and listening to music. Like, what joke world is this where we give a shit about a guy listening to music? And I disregarded it completely, because I thought to myself, I was like, if you had any idea, man, the road that I have traveled to get where I am sitting in front of my couch today, having my wife blow my face with a leaf blower to a Smashing Pumpkins song that led me to this moment, it hasn't all just been sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of heartache. It's been a lot of days where you go, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to move away and live in a tent in the middle of the mountains and never deal with anything in the arts or creative pursuits ever again, because I can't handle it. But for some reason, we're compelled. We have to. You can't stop me from doing it. You can't stop me from making shit. I can't. I have the idle hands problem, as I'm sure you do too.
Oh,
it's
dude,
like
I got to be doing stuff all the time.
I always had to be doing
constantly
stuff, and people will hear, job, family life, creating working on all these different things, and people will be like, well, man, you just need to take some time off. You're gonna burn yourself out. And I'm like, I'm always like right on the edge of burnout, like all the time. But that's just kind of how I roll. Dude,
I burn myself out like a couple times a year, and it's
totally
it's rough.
Me too.
And it's I just have to fucking take a nap for like 3 days. It's find opportunities to unplug. You know what really helped with that was psychedelics. But
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I recently, somebody gave me these microdose things, and I've yet to try them, but I'm anxious to try them. I've never done it before, but
they'll loosen up some dust up there.
Listen up, yeah.
So, but like, it isn't without personal sacrifice. I mean, there's also things that like, there's personal choices that I've made that will allow me to continue to work at the clip that I want to. And it's like, I also understand that people surrounding me aren't going to necessarily fall into that same boat. Like eventually some of my buds are going to age out of it. And, and who knows, maybe I will too, like the touring thing, like, I hadn't done a lot of shows in the last 6 years. And it was because I was pivoting my focus into what my professional career. And, but now I'm kind of, this year has been like the most active, like the last 12 months been like the most active I've been on the road in a really, really long time. But, I think next year will be pretty tame in comparison. Like this year we're celebrating a lot of anniversaries and things are turning 10, and, Into It Over, it's going to have its 15-year anniversary in September. And it's like, there's a lot happening this year that won't be happening next year, but it's, my desire to be like road dog is not what it was, but now we can do it at the balance is there now. There wasn't balance before. And so, so while it looks different, it's still motivated by the same thing. Yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit, because I don't get to have you all day long, but I love it. I love spending time with you, and you're just a great dude. And
Thanks,
we met just via, I think the first interaction we had was Twitter. I think that was our first
Well,
thing.
I found you on Instagram and I was a huge fan immediately. I mean, what's not to love about a dude just in a very wholesome way talking about grunge music, which is like, I'm absolutely a grunge kid. That's what I was raised on. It's my gateway into everything that I've gotten into as an adult, whether that's, any kind of subculture or counterculture, like it spawned from being involved in grunge, like being excited about grunge music first. And it's because, dude, Nevermind came out and I was 8 years old, just like primal ready to hear that record, so yeah, I mean, that's what's not to love about that. But then Twitter is a little more of a direct line of communication. Like,
right.
It's not like
you can do it
publicly.
publicly. You can publicly say like, hey, you can comment to the person, whereas leaving a comment on a post or DMing them, it has a different dynamic altogether. But yeah, there I am on Twitter, and you say something to me, and I'm like, holy shit, Into It Over It. Like, I like this band. This is amazing. That's awesome. So I was stoked when that happened. And then we messaged and talked, and I was even supposed to come see you live, actually. I was in Chicago visiting family, and this was not last Christmas, but the Christmas before, which we were still in that weird COVID territory, and it was a show.
We wound up canceling those shows anyway.
Yeah, you did. And so I was in town and they got canceled while we were there because it was still, we were in that era of 2021 to 2022, I think it was, that was kind of like, we're having these great open windows where things are going well, and then people would start, I think I was going to shows, and then we would have something happen, and so things would need to be canceled again, and everybody have to be precautious. Those things were happening. And so I had tickets to this show to see you, and then it did get canceled because of that, which I was like, damn it. I wanted so bad. I was there. And then we finally got a chance to meet in person at NAMM. And I got to hug you and take a picture with you. And then it's, you've just been a great friend and somebody that I look forward to hanging out with more. But I know you don't get out to the West Coast very often with your tours because
it's expensive.
Let's get to your waterproof record, because that is what this show kind of bases around. It's obviously talking about people's love of music, their careers in music and whatnot. But the core is, for me at least, we have those albums that we hear, we're young, and they just completely change the trajectory of our life. They force us to pick up an instrument, or they make us go, I have to work near music the rest of my life, or this is what I'm here for on this planet. And when I asked you what your waterproof record was, you gave me a solid 4, and I want you to break down what you said, which was so funny to me. And then let's pick one to kind of zero in on the moment. But
okay. You asked that question, and it's like, man, they're actually like different eras in my life that I think are pretty formative. I think from birth until about the time I'm 15 years old, which my whole life has been pretty much on the same trajectory since the age of 15. But and I actually had to add one because I was thinking in my head yesterday, because the first records that I heard where I was like, I love music. That was like the first, like when you're a young kid and someone plays music for the first time, you're like, whoa, like what is that? I want to listen to this again. Like we just sit in front of the turntable, let's do it over and over. There are actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there's 3. It was the one I told you was So by Peter Gabriel, which
absolutely,
it's still one of my all-time
classic album, and really represents, for my generation, my age, Peter Gabriel music videos were like the earliest MTV moment, burned in my brain. Sledgehammer, big time. You're like, this is what's possible in art and music on this box in front of me. And so when you said that, I was like, So by Peter Gabriel, absolutely.
So there was that. There was also Violator by Depeche Mode, which was another huge one. That was a record that I played relentlessly as a kid. And then Zendada Manada by The Police. Those were like the 3. So amazing. I grew up in a pretty like new wave home. Like my parents still are like really hip to what's new and what's coming out, and they're very, they love music, and there's always stuff playing in the house all the time. But those were 3 records that were in the house when I was in the 80s, like an 80s baby, just like I probably listened to Zendada Manada like a fucking million times.
Yeah.
That was just like incredible records that were like, okay, music's for me. That's my thing.
Yeah, right. This is my thing.
The first record that made me realize that I wanted to be involved in music, like really being like playing a band, or if I could be a musician, what it would be. It was Versus by Pearl Jam. Which so I was already a at this point, my parents had given me Nevermind for Christmas.
Right.
And,
I got it for Christmas too. They heard it. But it wasn't even on MTV yet. They heard it on NPR and thought I would have liked it. And so they got me the CD. So I was already really into grunge, and I owned 10 and I love 10, but Versus was the one that was just like, that shifted me into being like, Pearl Jam's my favorite band. Like this is like incredible shit. That's a raw album in comparison. Like, I mean, they got flack for it at the time in '93 when that dropped. There was all this pressure, and I didn't know this as much at the time, but that was their record. That was, the title itself, which you didn't even know from looking at the cover of it. You're like, here's a fucking sheep on this, and you're like, and you're like, what's this album called? And it was just Verses. And it was very combative, like, came out of the gate, just, really raw.
Dude, Animal, freaking right out of the bat. Like, you just
right out of the bat.
They drop you right in. So
that
was the record that was like, how do I be in a band,
Yeah.
But, so then two or 3 years later, fucking Dookie came out.
Right. And
that was the record that was actually like, oh, you can be in a band.
Yes.
Like, it didn't seem like there was a barrier for entry anymore. That was the record that really like was like, oh, like I could just get a guitar and link up with my friends and we can just figure it out.
We can do this. Yes.
So like, I think when hearing Verses and like kind of coming off of grunge was like, it seemed like there was a lot you had to do in order to make it work. Like you needed resources that you didn't have. And like, it wasn't just something you could find on your own.
Sure.
Dookie was the record that was like, oh no, we can just do this. Like we don't need to ask anybody's permission. Like this is just something we can do. And so that was actually the touchstone record of like, we started a band after that record came out. We named the band after a Green Day song because we were so excited about it.
Yes. JAR.
You got it.
I know my shit.
You did your research. So but it was like that was huge, right? It was unbelievably transformative. It's like that, and that was the kind of that wasn't even my gateway to punk. Like I loved punk because I knew that, but I didn't immediately fall into Fat Records or Epitaph or like we knew what those labels were, but we weren't getting like I hadn't heard the Descendants yet,
Sure. Sure.
But then coming off of the grunge thing, toward like getting into the later 90s was when I heard Sunny Day Real Estate for the first time. And then How It Feels to Be Something On had like just come out. And that is actually the record that is the reason why I write music the way that I do now.
Yes.
So that's my fourth watershed record. Yeah. Is that one specifically. And that's probably my favorite record of all time. But but based on your question, which I think is different. Your question isn't what's your favorite record of all time. Your question is like, what is the record that really set you on the path? I think Versus is the record that really set me on the path.
Yeah, and I know it's a tricky question, and each guest I have kind of does a different thing. Like some go, there's just they zero in on an album and they say this is the moment, and then there are other guests of mine that really struggle because of the eras and the chapters and times. And really, the people who've been listening to the show since the beginning, the name Waterproof Record just comes from a cute, adorable story with my son when he was 3 or 4 years old. And we were naming my future record store. Yeah. But Waterproof Records, I thought to myself, oh, waterproof, it's unsinkable. It can't be lost to time. It can't sink to the bottom of the ocean and be this relic. It's going to float forever. And so that I loved that notion. And so whenever I ask it of people, I'm like, there seems to be a turning point, especially for musicians, where you hear this band and you go, Mom, Dad, I need a guitar. Yeah. Or I need to play the drums, or I need to sing in a band immediately. And so for you, Versus Pearl Jam was the one that was like, let's get a guitar. Let's start playing some songs. Yeah. But I love what you said about the point of entry of Versus versus Dookie, because Dookie's 3 friends, 3 dudes. So the moment you see it, you go, I think I can get 2 guys.
Yeah.
But when you see Pearl Jam, you go, I need a front.
How am I ever going to do that? How can
There's
I ever
5
do
of
what
them.
Pearl Jam is doing? Like
There's 5 of them.
And even when you get in, when you start playing, you're like, how could I? You realize you're like, how could I ever do what Green Day is doing? But like,
Right.
But that it didn't seem unattainable or scary the way that they did it. It seemed like you watch them do Woodstock '94, and it's like. Yeah. This is fucking 3 assholes just goofing off. Like that's literally it. And it's like, I can goof off with my friends. I can totally do that. These songs aren't challenge. Like I don't need to be like Mike McCready fucking soloing over some crazy shit with a wah pedal. I could just play bar chords and like sing about, you know, I mean, I don't know if we would sing about jerking off at that age, but like, you know what I mean? Like it was just like,
but you can, it takes the pressure off. I've talked about before how, you know, my first real heavy love of music was metal. And I was really into heavy metal. And when you're starting out playing guitar and listening to metal, I just kept thinking to myself, I would just hit my head against the wall and go, I'm never going to be able to solo like these dudes. I'm never going to be able to, I can't play that fast. I can't shred. And alternative music, grunge music, that era took it out of this perfectly polished, you know, like you got to be a virtuoso. And it said, really, dude, it's just about good songs. That's what it's about. It's writing a tune. Yeah. You don't need to be able to shred if that's not your thing. You know what I mean? Like if you want to train, by all means, learn it. But if you just wanna write songs, Green Day shows you there's a real basic template you got to have. And then you get to be more creative. Yeah. And we've seen Green Day go from being what seemed like 3 friends who were doing really great songs. Then they've grown and matured and figured out a lot more dynamics as they've gotten older with time. I mean, you know, that's been cool to watch right there.
But that was where like, yeah, I mean, I've said it already, but it's like, you just realize how it doesn't seem so scary anymore. They made it feel like anyone could do it. Yeah. And that's so important to, and I mean, they're still doing it. They're still putting out records in the year 2023, and kids who are 10, 11 years old are thinking like, I can start a band. Yeah. And they're thinking that because of them, which like, imagine having 30 years of the ability of saying that you're influencing generations of people to like, not just pick up a guitar, but start a band.
Right. Exactly. And Into It, Over It, I'm going to encourage all of my listeners to check out your entire catalog of music. You have a lot of great albums that are available for streaming. Pick up the physical copies if you can, and you know, support Evan and his band. And he's touring and playing with people. Writes remarkable music, very catchy. You came across my world. I have a really, really good friend in Chicago, and he was the one that I was supposed to go see you with. His name's Jarrett Dapier, and he's a fantastic drummer. He's the one who kind of showed me your stuff years ago. And then you would turn up in these Spotify, you know, I'd be listening to songs, and these songs would come in just a random playlist that was just giving me the song. And I was like, God, it's fucking great. Who is this? Oh, Into It, Over It. And then when you listed those 4 albums over text, I was like, and this is meant to be a compliment, you have your own sound. But when I heard your 4 reference points in that thing, I was like, and it's there, and it's there, and it's there, and it's there. You can hear the influence. And I don't, you know what I mean? Like you can hear the Peter Gabriel, the Pearl Jam, the Sunny Day Real Estate, and the Dookie all combined into this great Evan Thomas Weiss salad. And it's there. Yeah, and it's there. You can absolutely hear it, and I just think it's wonderful. And your albums are growing and becoming really. You're doing something different every time. You know what I mean? It's really great.
Yeah, still trying to. You know, and now it's a little bit. I mean, we're still on that quest, and I think if we started working on like an actual, like, real, like we're just at like the very earliest tipping point of writing a new record. Like it's like the very beginning, and like these days I'm not trying to rush or like be like, oh, we have 30 days to make a record. This is how it used to be. It'd be like,
right,
we got 2 months. We got 2 months to write everything. Like now it's like, let's take a couple years and just like relax into it, you know?
Yeah.
But so, but now I'm a little less protective about, you know, I obviously still want to challenge ourselves and like use new sounds. Like that's another thing. Like every record has like new sounds on it.
Yes,
and so I'm still very fascinated about that and wanting to chase that. But Into It, Over It now is a band. Like
it is.
I've let go of my 100% creative control. It's split 4 ways across 4 guys. Like all the money is split evenly, 4 ways, 25%.
I love that.
Like it's gotten to the point where it's like, if this band is actually if this project is going to develop to the next stage of what it can be, I have to bring in people with creative input and ownership, and can allow them to let their voice and style influence the music. Because at this point now, if it were just me, the way it's been for however long, I would just keep making the same record. And so I'm cognizant of the, like, in order for this project to continue, it needs to evolve. And and so that now it's the next evolution. And so I'm excited to see where it goes moving forward. Because we've done a lot of songs in the last couple of years, and they've been like the collaborative, like all 4 people working on it. But they were also all songs that were ideas and stuff that had been left over from Figure, which was the last LP that we made. So there hasn't been just like brand new ideas and parts written with me and 3 other people. It's been like pre-written ideas that I had that were just me, but like now applying these other flavors and tastes on top of them. So I'm really excited to see where it goes moving forward. And it's actually it's uncharted territory at this point. Like I have no idea what it'll be like, but I'm excited to see it.
I am too. I really am.
It's where it's going.
Well, but before I don't get to talk to you any longer, because I know we've been going for a little bit here, I did want to talk. You kind of had a big week this week because you collaborated with Fender. Yes. And I wanted to see if you could share a little bit about that project. It was really, really cool. And, all in your comments, people were like, I want one. And you're like, sold out, bro.
Well, so in my normal life, in my professional life, I do. Yes. I work for a company called reverb.com. I've been there about over 6 years now. So 6.5 years I've been working there. And the team that I work on is called the business development team. So what I do is my day-to-day is working with brands and artists, but mostly brands in the music gear industry, helping them support new product releases, helping them develop products, helping them align campaigns surrounding their new releases, or marketing, helping them unload product if they need the assistance. Like anytime you're seeing a brand doing some level of campaign on Reverb, chances are I aligned it or touched the campaign in some way. So, okay, cool. So it's 2020. It's January 2020. So this is pre-pandemic, and we're at the NAMM show, and was with my buddy who works at Fender. We were talking about leaving the show and going to the Glass House in Pomona to see the band Joyce Manor. So
love it. I love that band.
So we skip out on the show. We leave the show. We bail on this party. We get in a rental car. We drive down to Pomona. We go to this fucking gig. And this was actually like a big night, because not only did I hang out with my buddy and get the initial conversations going about what I'm about to tell you, but I also saw an old friend, my friend Jamie Coletta, saw them at this show. And that was the night that I told them they wound up doing PR on Figure, which was the last Into It Over record. And the reason they did that was because I ran into them at that show and was just like, hadn't seen them in years, and was just so excited about what they were doing with PR. And, I was telling them I had a new record that was finished and it hadn't come out yet. I was like, interested in hearing their thoughts on it and if they wanted to work on it. And that all happened the same night. So it's like, wow. Just a very transformative night, and it only would have happened had I gone to the show. This is another big thing that, like, we were talking about, just setting yourself up for opportunity. You gotta fucking go places and meet people and talk to people. If you want to get stuff done, make yourself be around where shit is happening, and you'll absolutely find yourself in these scenarios. So we go to the show, we're driving home, and it comes out that Fender's been working on this idea with Kevin Shields from My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, if there's anything that I would love to work on, it'd be something like that. And, and we kept the conversation. Then the pandemic hits like 2 months later. Right. And we keep the conversation going for many, many years. And, or many years, like two years, finally.
It feels like a lot more than that, right?
Dude, it feels like an eternity, but eventually the conversation gets restarted. Sounds like the project's almost at the finish line. And then, I begin negotiating it, working it out. We get it all sorted out with Fender and Reverb partnering on this thing. And I got to go to Dublin and interview Kevin for the video that we did. got to talk to him about all sorts of things related to My Bloody Valentine, and really get a sense of not just what the product was, but like why it's happening, and how it came together, and their process and how they do so. It was just a really special project.
I bet.
And one that was really close to me, because like, I mean, we're men of a certain age, and we have very similar interests. So of course it's like, who didn't love Loveless? But like,
absolutely.
But like you and I would imagine, are two dudes who just fucking adore that record.
Love that album so much. Yes. So this opportunity is like, I have to do this. Yes.
So I'm sitting there and I'm like holding the guitar from the cover and I'm playing it. And I'm just like, this is the most surreal shit ever.
Amazing.
Amazing. And it just feels so good. You're like, damn. And it's like in these cool open tunings, and it's like, I play in open tuning, so I'm able to sit down and just start fucking with it right away. It's like, this felt really nice. But yeah, so this is completely surreal experience, and it finally all went live this week, and it was a big success. And and I have one.
He has it right here. It's a pedal.
It's just it was super, super cool, and it actually, we had known this little tidbit. It just went online today, but there was 100 of these that if you bought it on Reverb, there were 100 of them out of the amount that we sold that have a flash drive inside of it with an instrumental piece of music that Kevin wrote using the pedal.
No way. Oh, those 100. That's like, wow, this is like some Willy Wonka golden ticket level shit right there. It's like you open it up, you're like, oh, I got it.
Yeah. And
that's amazing.
And it was only the Reverb one. So we were like able to figure that out too, which is really, really cool. It was so hard holding on to that secret. Like
I bet. That's what a cool project to be involved with.
But it was like, but also getting to like insert parts of like my creative thing into it, like talking to the guys I've met, like, what does it look like to put this weird Easter egg inside of the pedal and not say anything? Like, that's a thing we would do with our label or with our bands, like those are the kind of like wacky things we would think about with our own art. And it's like, oh, I get to bring that side of myself into my professional life in this other way, and I get to work with other folks who are like really aligned on those same ideas, and it's really, really cool. I really love my job, and
I love it.
Even when it's stressful, it's still awesome. So
let's say the name of it, because I realize you held it up, but what's the name of the pedal?
Oh, it's called the Shields Blender. So
Blender.
So it's based off of a pedal called the Fender Blender, which was made in the 60s and through the 70s, and then it was discontinued for a long time. That was the pedal that's on like almost a lot of the My Bloody Valentine stuff. Like one of Kevin's go-to drives, and it got reissued in the 90s, and the 90s ones are actually made incorrectly, so they don't sound the same as the vintage ones. Really? They didn't find out that the 90s ones were made incorrectly until they started making this. And so so it came out during the production of this pedal that they realized that all of the ones that came out in the 90s and 2000s are made wrong. So if you have one of those, they're like actually their own thing. They're completely incorrect. And they fixed the part that was incorrect. And so these are like the original vintage ones.
Gotcha. So it's like the original sound. Yeah. The Shields Blender.
Totally
I just wanted people to hear what it was called, because I realized we held it up, and for people listening,
what is it?
They're like sitting there in their car, and they're like, tell me what the goddamn pedal's called. I don't know what it's called. Yeah. But before we wrap things up, I did want to say we didn't spend too much time really digging into the albums. We really just did it as a touchstone, a reference point, because do you remember where you were when you heard Pearl Jam's verses? Do you remember like the moment?
Oh, I bought it the day it came out. I was already like I loved 10, and then it was like,
so you were like, went and got it, picked it up. Was it a CD? CD?
Tower Records, brought it home, put it on. Yeah. I mean, I did that I probably bought every Pearl Jam record the day they came out up until binaural.
Okay.
But like then once it got to no code, I was buying vinyl at that point. So like
right.
And I went back, and there was a time when you could find copies of like Vitology and Versus for like $10-15 on LP. Right. And I guess you can now if you're getting reissues, but the originals used to not go for very much, and now they're all like go for a shitload of fucking money.
Yeah. No, those originals.
But if you're thinking about coming, you should come out to Chicago and see them at the United Center with me in September.
Oh, absolutely. I'm there's a really good chance I'm going to be going to Riot Fest, working on that right now. So might be attending that. And I have family in Chicago, so I do make my way out there. You know, and it hasn't been as often in the past few years, obviously, because there just hasn't been that much travel. But I get out that way, so we definitely have to hang out when I come to your turf. And if you ever come out this way, let me know, of course. Well, I mean, we do get a chance to see each other a little bit at NAMM, which is always a nice special thing to look forward to every year. But man, what are the best ways that everybody can really seek out your music that you want them to? You know, do you have a website?
So for Intuit Over It related things, it'd be intuitovert.com or Intuit Over It on your streaming services, or at Intuit Over It, just a single word. If you're interested in exploring Pet Symmetry, which is my like more rock, like the way we always describe it is like Foo Fighters meets Jimmy Eat World meets like
love it
the Lemonheads, you know, it's kind of like combination of just like more like power pop. So that'd be PetSymmetryBand.com, Pet Symmetry on your streaming services, generally at Pet Symmetry. Then I play in another band called There, which is like a little more like a technical, shreddier kind of thing. We would call it math rock. That's tttmusic.org. or at TTT Music on your social side, or there on streaming. And then I work on a project called Couplet, which is me and Adam from Intuit Over It with a buddy Tanner, who used to be in a band called You Blew It. And that's, I think it's just couplet.bandcamp.com, or coupletists is the social media.
Just search it, guys. Search it.
Yeah,
Be
just
smart.
look up Couplet. And then and then we run a record label called Storm Chasers Limited, which we run a Patreon that is our record label subscription. So we put out a vinyl record every month for a band that we're either in or loosely involved in, or it's like part of our collective community. It's flat rate. We send you records in the mail every single month based on what tier you're at. And you know, that's where at this point we're self-releasing almost everything we do. We partner with other labels from time to time, like they're just partnering with Polyvinyl, because Polyvinyl used to put out all of our stuff. But that's the release happening this month, is a There record. So if you wanted to sign up and get a copy, it's $25 or $35 depending on your tier. With the $35 to getting a bonus record, this band called Goings from Philadelphia that are awesome. It's the drummer of a band called Sweet Pill, which maybe you've heard. They sound like a math rock Paramore. They're fucking great. But so
many bands, man.
Dude,
so many bands.
We're really involved. So
you are.
That's patreon.com/stormchasersltd or stormchasersltd.bigcartel.com. That would be our web store for our label.
And I'll link these on, you know, like when I put this YouTube video out, it'll put it in the comments, and, you know, I mean down in the little tag in the bottom, I'll make sure to link these. So I'll get those from you. But I just want to make sure people, you've got a lot of stuff out there in the world. They should definitely, you know, go listen.
Yeah, so. We're working on a shitload all the time, and it doesn't stop. The train keeps moving. Our vinyl production schedule is already booked out through April of next year. So it's just like
incredible
stuff that's happening all the time. Always something new to update on.
Well, Evan Thomas Weiss, Mr. Intuit Over It, and many other bands, I have been so delighted that we made this happen, that we pulled it together, that you came onto Waterproof Records today and just shared your story about your journey and all the things that you've been working on, and excited to see where they go.
Thanks,
for the future. And just happy to have you as a friend in my life, and look forward to hanging out again soon. So thanks for coming on the podcast.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jacob.
Wow. What an incredible time I had. That was such a cool conversation, and I enjoyed every minute we had together. I could have made that podcast go on for hours, because honestly, he just has such a cool story, and I loved hearing about the way that he's taking control of his music career and the way he handles it in such a way that it becomes special and something he can maintain his joy about, and happiness and fulfillment. And I think that's just an important thing to remember when you're creating art or pursuing something like anything like this in the creative realms, is that you want it to always retain that joy. You want to keep that, because if that runs out, then why are you doing it? You know, art should come from a place of, I need to share this with people. And that's why I make the videos that I make. That's why I put out this podcast. I feel compelled. I feel driven to talk about the things I love, to share the things I love, to make the things I love. That's why I make the videos that I do. And I've spent a long time, like I talked about on the show, I've spent a long time in Los Angeles trying to make videos and movies and things that would inspire and make you laugh, and, you know, things that you would enjoy If you didn't know that about me, I've made 2 short films of my own that are on YouTube that I shot on an iPhone. And then I have a movie. I have a movie called I Had a Bloody Good Time at House Harker that I made with a team of writers and comedians called Good Cops TV. We made web series together. So that's on Amazon Prime, and that's also on Tubi for free. So if you didn't know that about me, I spent a long time creating content before this music thing happened. So if you want to check some of those things out, they're all available. I have link trees on my bios on Instagram and on TikTok that lead you pretty much to everything I've ever done. So if you want to check those out, as well as my shirts and things like that I'm always wearing in my videos. So again, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of Waterproof Records. I really can't make this show without you. I need more and more people to learn about it and know about it. So spread the word, share the joy, send them a link, talk about the bands that you're learning about on the show. Say this is a place where I sit down with you and we have a conversation about artists and bands and things that inspire us. And I hope it contributes to your day and uplifts you, inspires you, makes you want to create things of your own. Get out there and chase your dreams. I love doing this show and I love making the content that I do. I truly do. Huge thanks to Evan Weiss, for coming on the show, Into It, Over It. Make sure you click on those links and listen to his music and the band's music. And I'm excited to see what they're going to do next. So thank you once again for joining me on Waterproof Records. I'll see you next time.
Things are gonna change. I can feel it.
If this gonna be that kind of party, I'm gonna
Waterproof Records. Waterproof